Did you know that Attack of the Clones had 6 completely different tie-in games? From space combat to real-time strategy to third-person shooter and everything in between. And to mark Episode 2's 20th anniversary, we're going to take a look back at them. So let's set the scene. The year is 2002 and George Lucas is about to release his second Star Wars prequel. And of course, a movie this big is ripe for a tie-in game. Who can forget Phantom Menace, or as I like to call it, Gungan Murder Simulator?
No way!
By the early 2000s, the game industry had worked out a kind of a formula for tie-in games. A big movie's released, one of the big publishers churns out a tie-in game for the console and PC, and probably a handheld port. Hey, maybe they even pay one of the actors from the movie a couple of quid to do a few lines.
Potty mouth's getting a spanking.
But LucasArts took a different approach. Instead of adapting the entire movie into a single game, they took key elements from the film and developed the games around them. Think about it this way. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of Episode 2, apart from sand being rough and coarse? You'll probably think about the big clone battle on Geonosis, or the Jedi Starfighter, or Jango Fett. So LucasArts decided to develop games around these key visual elements. It was definitely a bold strategy, so let's see how it turned out. First up, released on March 10th, 2002, almost 2 months before the movie, we have Jedi Starfighter. In addition to being a tie-in game, this is also a sequel to Starfighter, which itself was kind of a Phantom Menace tie-in game. It's followed a Naboo starfighter pilot and a ragtag team of space pirates during the events of Episode 1. In the same way the first game was focused on the N1, this game is all about the Delta 7, and a couple of Force powers to boot. You see what I mean about basing these games around a key element? Jedi Starfighter begins right before the events of Attack of the Clones. Jedi Master Adi Gallia is testing a new prototype. Look at this. Doesn't it look cool, kids? Buy the toy. Adi Gallia is then summoned to the Jedi Council, where Mace Windu instructs her to investigate some suspicious Trade Federation activity in the Outer Rim. She soon meets Nim, a space pirate and one of the main characters from the first game. They do several missions together which involve pushing back the Trade Federation presence on the planet Maramir. But little do they know that Count Dooku has instructed this game's generic bad guy, Kavik Toth, to develop a new bioweapon called the Trihexalon. You know it's bad when it has 2 geometric shape names in one. You then play several missions focused around stopping these Trihexalon powered weapons. You keep swapping between the Jedi Starfighter and Nim's bomber. We also get a cameo appearance from Jango Fett.
Stand aside or I'll take your hit as well.
We'll be seeing a lot more of the bounty hunter later on in this video. The Jedi Master and Nim find the Trade Federation outpost where the Trihexalon is being produced. They fight their way inside and blow up the Trihexalon factory. So that's it, right? Nope. Just then, Mace Windu gets on the intercom and tells Adi Gallia that they've received a distress signal from Obi-Wan Kenobi on Geonosis. So this is where the game really starts to tie into Attack of the Clones. Adi Gallia arrives on Geonosis and has to escort the clone transport to the planet. I take it this is the same Star Destroyer that Yoda comes down in the movie? It's only one ship though, wasn't there like an entire fleet? The next level takes place on the surface of Geonosis. This time you have to protect a bunch of clones while they sabotage a Geonosis bunker. Whee! Look at these little clones go! Like most flight sims at the time, Jedi Starfighter has to do a bit of balancing when it comes to resources. You get these vast levels, but they feel quite barren and empty. You don't really notice it when you're flying in space or doing an ocean level, but then you get to Geonosis expecting, well, this. Meanwhile, but hey, it's still fun to blow up the core ship, and zapping an entire squadron of droids in one go with Force lightning is very satisfying. Wait, what? Is that what these things really walked like? You then go back up into the planet's atmosphere because Kavik Toth, the generic bad guy from earlier on, is back, and he's got one last stash of Trihexalon that he's aiming right at the planet. But it's not all bad, because Nim arrives to help Adi Gallia intercept the missiles and destroy Toth's fleet. No! And that's it, the good guys win and they all live happily ever after. This game does have a good amount of extras, like every campaign mission can be played co-op split screen and there are a bunch of multiplayer versus missions. You can also replay the levels with different ships from the movies like the X-Wing or the Republic gunship and even the Slave One. And they're not just the reskinned Delta 7, each ship flies differently and has a completely unique weapon system. Look, there have been a lot of Star Wars space combat games, and while Jedi Starfighter doesn't reach the heights of the Factor 5 games, it's still great fun. Honestly, the only problem I have with this game is the misleading cover, which has Mace Windu and Count Dooku front and center. You see both of these characters like twice in pre-rendered cutscenes at the start and the end. And look at Count Dooku's face, he knows the devs did a bait and switch. I've never seen such bullshit. Apart from that, it's a solid game. I'll give it 7 out of 10 trihexalon missiles. The next entry isn't a full game, but I'll give it a quick mention. Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds Clone Campaigns was released on May 14th, only 2 days before Attack of the Clones. Clone Campaigns was an Episode 2 themed expansion pack to the Galactic Battlegrounds real-time strategy game released in 2001.
Gunducks, they're attacking the camp!
This expansion allows you to play a number of campaigns as either the Republic or the Separatists. I was always too stupid for RTS games as a child, so my strategy was gathering as many clones and Jedi in a bunch, marching them through Geonosis like a street gang, and then beating the fuck out of the droid control core like it was some kind of a piñata. Oh, and I also remember this hut just toppling over if you shoot it and then slowly sinking in the sand. Galactic Battlegrounds uses the same engine as Age of Empires 2, so if you've played that game growing up, you're gonna feel right at home here. Moving on, released on May 30th, 2 weeks after the film's release, we have Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, the game. I know what you're thinking. You said LucasArts wasn't going to do a tie-in game based just on Attack of the Clones. Well, you see, I don't really think this counts because this game was only released for the Game Boy Advance. That's right, no consoles or PC, just the Game Boy Advance. So, what's this game like?
Oh, not good.
This is your typical low-effort GBA tie-in. PowerPoint slide screenshots from the movie? Check. Generic game-only enemies? Check. Awkward controls? Big check. So you have to press the A button to swing the lightsaber, that's fine, but it will only work if you do it in conjunction with the D-pad. Why? Look, you wanted to add an extra attack combo for the directional buttons? Great, but why not map just a regular swing onto the A button? I remember when I first played this game, I legitimately thought my Game Boy was broken. Anyway, so you start the game as Anakin on Coruscant. Oh, and there's no save functionality either, you have to use the password system, so make sure you have a pen and paper ready. We then move on to the speeder chase. That's right, when I think of the cancelled 1313 game, this is exactly how I imagine it. Back to platforming, and this time Anakin has to chase after Zam Wessel. Come back. Gosh. I wish I could run instead of just strolling at a leisurely pace. Oh no, generic alien assassins. Get off me. Stop kicking me. Anakin Skywalker, the one prophesized to bring balance back to the Force, gets his ass kicked to death. Literally. Oh wow, they really don't mess around with the plot. We jump from Coruscant to Naboo and then Kamino. And now we're playing as Obi-Wan. Oh, look at the way he sways his hips. Wait, I don't understand. The Kaminoans are really nice to Obi-Wan in the movie. They think he made the order for the clone army. So why are they sending all of these droid assassins to kill their best customer? Alright, so Obi-Wan then chases Jango through the asteroid field. Jesus, this makes Star Fox look like Flight Simulator 2020. And then we go back to Tatooine for everyone's favorite bit. Anakin descends down on the Tusken camp where he kills not just the men, but the women, and the children, and their dogs, and their banthas. Hold on, is Anakin doing finger guns to use the Force? Back to Obi-Wan and his restless hips. The Jedi gets to swat a few Geonosians before getting captured. Anakin goes to save his master, but ends up squashed by a hydraulic press and also gets captured. Okay, so what's next? Oh shit, it's Mace Windu, and this time he's trying to swat Jango Fett out of the sky. You then chase after Dooku, and then you have to fight him in the final level. Well, eventually, after Obi-Wan gets through the entire Droid Army. Dooku is very easy to beat. For some reason, he doesn't know how to block downswings. So you beat him as Obi-Wan first, and then Anakin gets a turn to swipe at the old man's knees, and that's it. Look, it's a terrible game, but it actually hits all the beats you'd expect in an Attack of the Clones tie-in game. The Coruscant chase, fighting Django, killing Tuskens, the arena battle, taking on Dooku. So I guess it's got that going for it. I'll give it 3 central Obi-Wans. We wouldn't actually see the next Episode 2 tie-in game until October of that year. LucasArts did this for a few reasons. Pushing some of the games back allowed the developers more time to work on them. Movie tie-in games have a reputation of being rushed, which can impact the quality. The delay also meant these games would coincide with the film's home video release in November.
Yoda the Man, available on DVD and VHS.
And you'd have some new Star Wars games in time for the lucrative holiday season. And so, first in the second wave of tie-in games, we have Star Wars The Clone Wars for PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox. Not to be confused with the 2 animated series and all the games associated with them, no, this game predates all of those. The best way to describe this game is you get a bunch of Star Wars vehicles and blow shit up. You've got tanks, speeders, clone transports, AT-XTs, and even dinosaurs, each capable of great destruction. But not Jedi Starfighters, no, you've got to buy the other game to play in those. The Jedi also leave their vehicles for a couple of levels, but you're going to be spending most of your time doing 2 things, either throwing your lightsaber like a boomerang, or blasting enemies with the mother of all force pushes. Seriously, the force push in this game is more like a shotgun, just aim in the general direction of the enemy and BAM! Story-wise, the game starts right before the Battle of Geonosis. The Jedi and the Clone Army are approaching the planet. Mace Windu sets down first, jumping inside his tank and blowing up the orbital cannons so the rest of the fleet can get in. This is a nice tie-in to the movie as you get to see Mace and the other Jedi approach the arena from the other side. Look, they even added a tiny little Anakin, Obi-Wan and Padme. Also, the TX-130 tank introduced in this game would go on to make an appearance in both the old and the new Star Wars Battlefront games. It would even get a Lego version. You then actually get to fight in the Battle of Geonosis. That's more like it. None of this empty wasteland business. Oh wow, you think they could have made the clone troopers a bit more, I don't know, imposing? This is you versus the guy she tells you not to worry about. Overall, the first few Geonosis levels serve as a nice prologue to the game and tie into Episode 2 pretty well. The rest of the game actually takes place after Episode 2 during the Clone Wars. We start with Anakin and Obi-Wan just casually flying through space when they encounter the entire Separatist fleet. Obi-Wan and Anakin then have to organize an evacuation of the Republic outpost on the snow planet Renvar. And by organize, I mean blow a bunch of shit up. With that done, they report back to Yoda and Mace. Also, they didn't really even try with Obi-Wan's voice actor, he just sounds like some generic posh bloke.
Raxus is a backwater planet of no strategic importance.
Obi-Wan and Anakin are then ordered to investigate the junk planet of Nexus Prime for some suspicious activity. Fun fact, this is the same Nexus Prime that would go on to be featured in The Force Unleashed a few years later. We get a nice little speeder chase followed by some tank action. Everything's going really well until Anakin goes and gets himself captured by Count Dooku. Dooku then reveals his new toy, a giant disco ball he calls the Force Harvester, and this thing is capable of draining the Force energy of all living things around it. Anakin is then taken to one of Kashyyyk's forest moons, where Dooku plans to use the Harvester to kill both Anakin and the Wookiee population, but Anakin escapes just in the nick of time. You can also free these Wookiees, just be careful where you throw the lightsaber. Whoops. Wait, what's even the point of rescuing all of these Wookiees if the pink cloud of death just ends up getting them anyway? Look, they don't have speeders. Anyway, so you outrun the pink haze of death. Once you do that, Anakin gets to ride on this dinosaurs with blasters welded on its back. Anakin then helps the Wookiees liberate the planet from the Separatist forces just in time for the clone army to arrive. The young Jedi reconvenes with his management, who explain the Force Harvester is actually just the power cell for an ancient Sith weapon called the Dark Reaper, which was hidden by a fallen Jedi named Ulic Queldroma. Look, I've never actually heard anyone pronounce this guy's name. He was a big deal in the Tales of the Jedi comic books back in the 90s, okay? Anyway, remember Ranvar, that seemingly random ice planet from earlier on? Well, it just so happens to be the final resting place of old Ulic. Obi-Wan and Anakin must return to the planet and stop the Separatist forces from finding more clues about the Dark Reaper. It's funny, Obi-Wan asks if Yoda can help them, and the old man just goes,
No.
my destiny. This is not.
What a shitty excuse. Just say you don't want to go. So you blow more shit up, retake the planet back from the Separatists. Anakin finds the spirit of Ulic, who agrees to tell him where he's hidden the Dark Reaper. So the Jedi send their entire army to the planet Thule, which houses the Dark Reaper. And oh look, the Separatists are already there. Anakin then fights his way to the ancient Sith temple and confronts the Dark Reaper, which looks like a giant UFO from Close Encounters. You destroy it by blowing up the disco ball, and that's it. Look, this game has a pretty decent campaign. I would have liked to see more Jedi action and less tank action, but what can you do? I will give it props for managing to tie in both the 90s comics and extending the story past episode 2, but to me the most memorable thing about this game is the multiplayer. There are a bunch of maps for vehicles which can be played up to 4 players in both co-op and versus modes, but my favorite multiplayer section was the Geonosis Arena, where you and a couple of friends take on hordes of enemies. What makes this part special is the developers added a twist. After a few waves, the game becomes a last man standing duel, and at that point all teamwork breaks down and the lightsabers start flying.
What have you done? You've created a time paradox.
There are a few Jedi to choose from: Obi-Wan, Anakin, Mace Windu, and this generic bloke. I love it. They could have added Plo Koon or Ki-Adi-Mundi or Kit Fisto, but no, they added Jedi Master Keith. And so there we have it. Clone Wars for PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube. What can I say? It's just a really fun game. I'll give it 7 out of 10 Jedi Master Keiths. Moving on, released on November 14th, 2 days before the movie's home video release, we have new Droid Army for the Game Boy Advance. That's right. It's another Game Boy Advance game, only this one is set after the events of the movie, and it's played across an isometric perspective instead of side-scrolling. So is this one any good? Well, let's see. As I said, the game picks up right after the events of episode 2. Anakin is called before the Jedi Council. Looks like it's only Yoda and Mace, the rest must be working from home. He's told to investigate rumors of a new separatist weapon on Tatooine. You know how isometric games were always awkward on the Game Boy Advance because of the D-pad? Well, this game tries to fix it by skewing the direction of the D-pad, so up is actually right, left is up, and so on. Anakin also walks very slowly. There is a way to make him run, but it will drain your force energy, which you have to wait to recharge. And using the lightsaber also drains your force energy. The only thing that doesn't drain it is blocking, and that doesn't exactly work well. So Anakin makes his way through Tatooine, killing giant rats and rescuing farmers from Tusken Raiders. Wow, these Tusken Raiders are really slow. Look, you can just outrun them by walking away. The character dialogue icons are clearly just the game developers. So Anakin gets captured and has to fight his way through Jabba's palace. He then takes on this generic looking Sith lady. Anakin is then called back to Coruscant because the capital is under attack. But for some reason, no one wants to help Anakin in this game. Look, Obi-Wan just walks away and stands there waiting for a cab. You run into Barriss Offee down at the lower levels and she doesn't do shit either. No wonder Anakin turned to the dark side. Okay, so then we get the Jedi Temple level. This one ends in Anakin having to take on a particularly pissed off developer. Anakin is then sent to the planet Matalorn to destroy the droid factory and capture Wat Tambor. You know, the Techno-Union fridge guy. This level ends with you having to escort Wat all the way back through the droid factory. I can't leave without Wat Tambor. Yes, you can. You're going to kill him in episode 3 anyway. And so finally the game ends with a duel between Anakin and Count Dooku. Let me guess, Dooku's just going to run away. Oh, whoa, he's dead. Holy shit, Anakin actually kills Count Dooku in this game. And he's not like a clone or an android or anything. No, he kills Count Dooku, goes back to the Jedi Council, and credits. So I guess this game is set in like an alternate reality, right? Okay, wow, just for that curveball, I'm going to give it 4 angry developers out of 10. And so we move on to the final Attack of the Clones tie-in game. Released on November 19th, we have Star Wars Bounty Hunter. Set a decade before Episode 2, Bounty Hunter serves as a backstory for Jango Fett, showing how he acquired the Slave One, how he met Zam Wesell, and why he became the genetic template for the Clone Army. The first few levels act as a tutorial. The game really gets going once you start getting some of Jango's iconic weapons and the jetpack. And I think the jetpack is really what separates this game from other generic third-person shooters, although I wish it had a longer range. So the basic plot of this game revolves around a bounty placed by Count Dooku on his former apprentice who's turned to the dark side, and also joined this alternative-looking crime syndicate called the Bandagora. Jango travels across a bunch of planets looking for clues as to her whereabouts. To me, Bounty Hunter was a spiritual successor to The Phantom Menace for the PlayStation 1, because it was a third-person action game set around the same time in the story? No, because you could go around murdering anyone and everyone, from Rhodian thugs to protocol droids, to Ugnaughts. The Coruscant levels are some of my favorites in this game, but I have to say it's tough to make out the thugs from the regular people. Ah, shit. As Jango progresses through the game, he acquires new weapons like the flamethrower and the poison dart. And yes, before you ask, you can use them on civilians. In fact, these twisted developers actually let you tie up the civilians first and then fry them, or just tie them up and beat them to death with your bare hands. And what's the rating on this gruesome game? 11+. But, apart from their bloodthirst, you can tell the developers really wanted to create a rich and vibrant universe for the player to explore. Jango goes from fighting in the gladiator pits of a space station to chasing bounties across the upper and lower levels of Coruscant. He then performs a prison break on an asteroid where he meets Zam Wesell and acquires the Slave One. He then ends up on the dug homeworld of Malastare. So remember earlier on how I mentioned that Phantom Menace for the PlayStation 1 was the Gungan murder simulator? Well, this section can best be described as the Sebulba murder simulator. But don't get the wrong idea, these dugs are far from innocent. The entire population of Malastare wants to kill you. Not just the soldiers, but the civilians too.
Excuse me, can I borrow some sugar? It's a standoff.
With the population of Malastare obliterated, Jango travels to Tatooine, and these levels are also a complete meat grinder. After going through hordes of assassins, Jango reaches Jabba the Hutt, who kind of looks like Peter Griffin in this game. There's also a Tusken level. It's funny, this is the third Attack of the Clones game which allows you to slaughter Tuskens. Anakin would be proud. Jango then gets imprisoned by Gardulla the Hutt, he escapes, and makes bacon out of some Gamorrean guards. After all of that, Jango finally tracks down Dooku's apprentice, who just so happens to be on a planet comprised entirely of Devil May Cry levels. I can't help but think of Asajj Ventress every time I see this edgy, evil lady. She's even got the same dual lightsabers. So this lady was Dooku's last apprentice, and Asajj Ventress was his next apprentice. Wow, the Count really has a type. Sorry, Qui-Gon. Naturally, she's the game's final boss, and this lady doesn't fuck around. If you lose, there's actually a cutscene where she beheads Jango. Talk about foreshadowing. But if you do defeat her, Count Dooku appears from the shadows and explains that this was all a test to see if Jango was a suitable candidate to become the clone template. Jango accepts the offer and they all live happily ever after. Well, overall Bounty Hunter is probably my favorite out of all these games. To me, it's always been the blueprint for what a good tie-in game should be. It answers a lot of the questions you have after you leave the movie theater while also expanding the story. Sure, not all the levels are great, the jetpack runs out of juice way too quickly, and the camera tends to jump all over the place. But I think these are all kind of minor setbacks in a game packed with cool environments, fun weapons, a decent story, and pretty good graphics for the time. I'll give it 8 out of 10 dead dugs. And so, there we have it, every Attack of the Clones tie-in game released in 2002. Look, these may not be the greatest games ever made, but you've got to give it up to LucasArts for the sheer ambition. I can't think of any other movie that's had 6 completely different tie-in games. A space sim, an RTS expansion pack, a side-scroller, vehicle combat, an isometric adventure, and a third-person action game. By the time we got to Revenge of the Sith, LucasArts went back to a traditional movie tie-in game. And look, I love that game, but I was kind of disappointed we never got a medical droid backstory game or a Coruscant firefighting simulator. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and let me know how many of these Episode 2 tie-in games you played, which were your favorites, and why. Also, please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.